What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Legit Fishing. Hey, I hope everybody's having a good day. My name is Dustin Holland, and this is Legit Fishing. Today we're going to talk about a somewhat controversial topic in the bass fishing world, and that is LiveScope. Now, I'm not going to dive into the drama that it brings up. I don't understand it myself, but what we are going to talk about is the baits that I use, and I'm going to give you a couple different options for rods and reels. There's a ton of different baits, ton of different presentations that you can use for LiveScope. I mean, you can drop shot, you can, swim an A-rig, you can swim a swim bait. There's just a million different options, but the main technique that we're going to talk about today is kind of the hover strolling technique. That for me has been, especially this time of year, this late winter, early spring, throughout the deep winter, has been kind of the technique that I've used that has paid off using LiveScope. So the first thing we're going to talk about is one bait in particular, and that is these. These are the Berkeley Power Bait Power Switch. This is a relatively new bait, and if you noticed, it says FFPS optimized. This bait has a foil insert inside the bait. I don't know how well the camera will show up, but there's actually a piece of foil that runs through the middle of this bait, and this helps it show up on your LiveScope, whether you're running the Garmin, whether you're running Lowrance or Humminbird. This really makes this bait stand out on your screen. And I'll give you another tip and a trick for helping other baits stand out later in this video, but this bait is already pre-rigged, comes with your lead and the hook in it, and all you have to do is tie this on and you can see it extremely well. I have Garmin with an LVS 32 transducer. A lot of people have gone to the new 34. I still like the 32. To me, it kind of sets up better for the way I like to use my system. Now, that is a pre-rigged option. The other options I'm going to show you are not pre-rigged. You have to have your own jig head, or you can do a hook with a separate nail weight, however you want to do it, but I'm going to show you some jig head options. This is one, and this one has been around for a while, even kind of pre-LiveScope, but this is the VMC Moon Eye jig head. This is a 3/8 ounce, and it has a little tiny hook. I really like this head for a few different techniques, but I don't use these as much as some of the more recent innovations in the jig head. These are really good when you've got a finicky fish that doesn't want to bite. I really like these for smallmouth. It's a little bit more compact presentation. That hook is just kind of small, so depending on the size soft plastic you use, it might be difficult to get a hook in that fish, depending on how well they eat the bait. Another one that I really like, and this is also kind of more of a compact version, but it's also a smaller jig head. Now, they do make this up to a 3/8 ounce, but I have these in the 1/16, and these are the Megabass Okashira screw heads. And these are the ones that have the kind of little propeller on them. They make them with or without that. I like these. It gives kind of a random fall. It doesn't really, you know, fall in a straight line. It'll kind of dart off to one side. When you reel this, depending on how far you push your plastic up, that little propeller will kind of spin almost like a devil's horse bait. But I really like these as well. But my number one jig head that I use when I'm using my LiveScope, and these are actually a locally made to me brand, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but these are your Jig Rig style jig heads. They actually, one of the rods I'm going to show you, actually two of them have this same head tied on, but this is your jig head, and then you've got your hook. This one happens to have two bait keepers on it. One thing you will notice about all the jig heads I've shown you, and kind of all the better ones on the market for doing the hover strolling technique, is this hook eye is in the top of the bait. This helps you get a more vertical fall if you're trying to get down to a deeper fish. It doesn't affect when you go to reel that bait in. A lot of your swim bait heads will have, you know, that 60 degree, 30 degree hook eye out here. Those are great if you're just swimming the bait, but if you're trying to get it to do a quick fall or be able to hold it kind of vertical above those fish, they're not as great as one that has this 90 degree bend that comes straight out the top of the jig head. Now, like I said, this is a Jig style jig head. This is actually made by Spanker Jigs. I found these at a tackle expo I recently went to, and I really like these because this is a 1/4 ounce head, but it has a 5/0 hook in it. Most of these have a smaller hook. Like I said, this is a 3/8 ounce in the Moon Eye, but the hook is either a 2/0 or a 3/0. It's a lot smaller than this. And when I'm throwing these baits, this is all about a reaction bite. You're holding that bait in front of that fish, and you're literally just sitting there kind of playing keep away from the bass, and you're trying to get them to bite. It's less about finesse and more about just trying to get them to bite it as a reaction. So I like having that bigger hook because it just gives me more, you know, for them to get a hold of. So those are the jig heads I really like. Some great options. There's a bunch of them out there that are different than these, but now we'll kind of go on to more of the soft plastics. My number one, every time I've got a rod with hover strolling in mind on the deck of my boat, which is pretty much 100% of the time anymore, I have a juggle minnow tied on. Ben Milliken made these famous, and the hover juggle rig, these are a great option for a LiveScope bait. They've got a lot of action in them. It's a very soft plastic, and that tail will just move all over the place. I really, really like these. These are in the 4K Shad. There's a couple different options, but this one by far is the one that I throw more than anything. And this is a great option. And even with this bigger jig head, that hook is not too big for this bait. I won't rig this one up, but you can see if you rig this on here, that hook's coming out, you know, a good 1/4 to 1/2 inch before you get into this skinny part of the tail. So even though this is a smaller bait, this is a 4-inch bait, this is still a great hook for that. Now another option, I'm a huge fan of, during the winter time, during this early pre-spawn time of year, throwing an underspin. Another great bait to throw using your LiveScope. But everybody that throws an underspin or, you know, a small swim bait knows Kitech. This is another bait from Kitech other than the Fat Swimmer. This is the Easy Shiner. A little bit slimmer profile bait. This is a 4-inch, and it's nowhere near the size of even a 3.8 Kitech Fat Swimmer. As far as the body goes, these are a lot thinner, and this is a great profile. It has a paddle tail on it, different from the fork tail of the Juggle Minnow. But this is another great option to throw for hover strolling. Another one that I've been using, and this is kind of what I throw when I want a bigger bait. A lot of our lakes where I'm at, they're highland reservoirs. We've got a lot of bluebacks. We've got a lot of alewive. A lot of your gizzard shad, your threadfin, you don't see those as much. Especially gizzards, we hardly ever see them anymore. They're kind of starting to come back, but if I am on a lake that I need a bigger profile, I really like this Power Bait Jerk Shad. This is actually a saltwater bait, but I haven't found a difference between, you know, the normal saltwater packages versus your normal power bait, other than they don't make this Jerk Shad in the yellow pack of power bait. It's only labeled for saltwater. This is actually the mullet color. This mimics a blueback very well. It's also kind of similar to a threadfin, but it's a bigger profile. This is a 5-inch bait. For a hover stroll technique, I'm not going any bigger than this, and I rarely throw this, but when I'm on a lake that has some larger bait in it, this is a great option to rig on this head. Again, 90% of the time when I'm rigging for hover strolling, I'm using this Demiki style head. I just prefer the bigger hook, because even with this bigger bait, it's coming out middle part of the body, perfect size. All right, let's talk rods and reels. I'm going to give you 3 different options. One is what I would consider a budget option. There's definitely some cheaper options out there, but for me, I consider it a budget option. And I've shown this rod and reel before, but this is the 13 Fishing Fate V3 with a 13 Fishing Architect 2.0 reel. One thing, the 3 combos that I'm going to show you today all have in common is they are all a medium light action rod. I would not go any more than a medium for this technique. I personally really like a medium light. This rod is a 610. This is the shortest rod out of this lineup, but like I said, this is a budget option. This rod and reel combo together will come in right around $150. You're looking at about $90 for the rod and about $60 to $70 for the reel on clearance right now. Now, moving into the middle price point. Again, this is what I consider middle price point. A lot of people would consider this a high-end combo, but for me, falling in the middle is the Dobyns Sierra series matched up with a Shimano Sahara FJ25. This particular rod is a multi-purpose rod for me, and that's kind of what's great about all of these rods I'm showing you. You can use these for multiple different things, but this is the Sierra SA702 SF. This is also considered a medium light rod. It has a fast tip, but this combo is going to come in right around $280. You can find it cheaper on sale, but I use this rod for hover strolling. I use this rod for a drop shot. I use this rod for a Ned rig. Any of your kind of lighter finessey techniques, this is my go-to rod. I really, really like this rod. I've had it for years now, and you can tell the grip is kind of worn, and it has been used and abused, and it has held up to everything I've thrown at it. You already know how I feel about these Shimano Saharas. I absolutely love them for the money. There's more expensive, there's cheaper, but for the money, this is my go-to spinning reel. The next combo, I actually have a Sahara on that rod as well, but I'm going to compare it with a Vanford. So this is the 6th Sense Unicorn. This is a 7-foot, 2-inch medium light rod. So this is the longest out of the group. You have the 13 Fishing coming in at 6'10", the Dobbin Sierra coming in at 7 foot, and this is another 2 inches longer at 7'2". I use this rod for hover strolling, and I use this rod for a drop shot. 99% of the time, especially during the winter, this rod has a drop shot tied on. But this is an awesome rod for, again, many of your finesse techniques. 6th Sense also makes this in the Milliken MFer series that's a little bit more budget friendly. I just wanted to try one of these unicorn rods out. 6th Sense was running a sale when I purchased this one, and I got a pretty good deal in it. But this rod is $300. You pair that with a Vanford, you're talking another $250. So $550 for a high-end combo. Again, you can go a lot more expensive than that, but to me, that's pretty high-end. It's honestly pretty high-end how I have it set up here. You're talking about a $390 combo as it sits. But this rod is super sensitive. I really like the long handle on this rod. It makes it balance super well. The balance point of this rod is actually right here at the tip of the reel seat. And it is super comfortable to fish with all day. Weirdly enough, when I first threw this rod, I had a new experience of a smooth rod. Obviously you feel, you know, reels that are smooth and you can tell a difference, but this rod with the guides and everything on it, the rod itself actually felt very smooth when I was reeling my line in. But I really, really like this rod too. And here's your high-end combo. So when I mentioned the first bait, talking about these power switches that have the full in them and how that helps it to show up on your screen, it really makes that bait pop and highlight it to where you can see it. I mentioned I'd share a trick that you can use with any of these other baits. And a lot of you, if you've looked into LiveScope, you probably already know this, but bait pop. This stuff is incredible. I've got to where pretty much every soft plastic that I throw, I put a little bit of this on there. It helps me see it on my screen. It actually adds some scent to your bait, and it also adds a little bit of color. This is a copper color, and it is actually crawfish scented. I really like this for a shaky head. I have a tube of the green, which is shad scented. That's typically what I use for this technique, for the hover strolling, for, you know, any minnow type baits, but you could use this. Honestly, I feel like scent is a big key when it comes to bass fishing, so I don't think anything is gonna hurt if you use a crawfish scent on a minnow bait. It's not going to matter, in my opinion. I don't think a bass is going to come up and think, oh, you know, that minnow smells like a crawfish, I better not eat that. They're keying in on the smell, they're keying in on what they see. But this stuff is really awesome. It fully helps your bait show up on the screen. So that's kind of my basic introduction to hover strolling and some LiveScope stuff. I could talk about this all day. Like I said, there's a million different options when it comes to rods, reels, baits, everything. But this is just kind of not necessarily a beginner's guide, but could be considered a beginner's guide for LiveScope fishing. Every product that I've shown here will be linked in the description to the video below. I'm not sponsored by any of these guys. I bought all this stuff with my own money, but I want to help you be able to find the products that I'm talking about. So there will be a link in the description to everything that I mentioned. I appreciate the likes. I appreciate y'all subscribing. I'll see y'all in the next video. Have a good one.